Have you ever heard the term Deus ex machina? It's Latin, and it literally means God from the machine. It refers to a practice followed by many of the ancient Greek playwrights who would paint themselves into a plot corner, creating seemingly impossible situations for the characters in their plays, when suddenly, in the play, a god or a goddess would appear on stage and magically settle all the problems, close all the loopholes, and bring the play to a satisfactory conclusion. The actor playing the god or goddess would be literally lowered onto the stage by a crane, hence the term Deus ex machina, God from the machine. The term today has come to refer to any situation in fiction where some outside force or figure suddenly appears on the scene and resolves whatever problems exist at the moment. Do you remember reading Lord of the Flies in high school or college? Do you remember how at the very end of the book, when it looks like the boys are finally going to kill off everybody, a ship appears on the horizon and they're whisked off to civilization? Deus ex machina. Webster defines it this way: a person or a thing that appears or is introduced suddenly and unexpectedly and provides a contrived solution to an apparently insoluble difficulty. The ancient Jews, of course, were monotheists and didn't believe in multiple gods and goddesses. However, in their own way, they did believe in the concept of Deus ex machina. But it wasn't God who usually suddenly appeared and set things right. Rather, it was a representative of God. It was an angel, or sometimes a whole host or army of angels. Such is the case with our lesson this morning from John, even though it isn't readily apparent. This story is based on that Deus ex machina understanding. It takes place in Jerusalem at a pool of water known as Bethsaida. It was a fairly deep pool, and it was fed by an underground stream. Occasionally, the stream would bubble up and ripple the waters on the surface of the pool. Those who saw this happen were convinced that that happened because of an unseen angel who they believed descended from heaven and stuck its foot in the water and caused the ripple effect. This, they believed, created a divine moment in the water. And whoever was first in the water after it began to ripple would be cured of all their ills and ailments. That is why so many sick and disabled people were lying around the outer edges of that pool. They were waiting for the water to be stirred up so that they might be the first one in, so that they could be cured. They hoped for that chance. No matter how difficult their situation, no matter how grave their affliction, they were hoping for a Deus ex machina. They were waiting for an angel. As Jesus comes upon the scene, one of the men lying around the pool has been ill for 38 years. 38, more than half a lifetime. He is so weak that he can't move without help. And anytime the waters are stirred, others easily rush ahead of him and bathe in the pool. He is desperate. 38 years, imagine. What a long, long time. There's no indication in John's account that the man recognizes Jesus as the healer from Nazareth. In fact, he may have been a bit indignant at Jesus' question. Jesus' question to him may have struck a real nerve. "Do you want to be made well?" asks Jesus. Do I want to be made well? Do I want to get up from here and walk again on my own? Do I want to be able to take on the normal responsibilities of work and family? Do I want a life filled with good things, not just lying around all day? Of course, of course. But I can't get down to the water. Everybody beats me to it, and so here I lie. Now, one would think that such a response would elicit an expression of sympathy. Oh my, we might say, should we come across such a situation, that really is so unfortunate. I'm so sorry to hear about your troubles. If we were feeling really generous and didn't have another appointment in an hour or two, we might even wait around so that we could help the poor soul down to the water the next time it rippled. But not Jesus. No pitying words are offered here. No politically correct expressions of sympathy. None of that. Instead, he offers words that can only be described as impertinent, even cruel, at least on the surface. Here, this poor man has been an invalid for 38 years, a captive of his illness, so desperate that he's reduced to waiting on angels. And what does Jesus say? Stand up, take your mat, walk. Can you imagine if I walked into Health Park and said that to one of my parishioners? Can you imagine doing it yourself? Shocking. Whatever happened to Jesus, gentle, kind, and good? This guy sounds like a drill sergeant. He's an ancient male version of Jane Lynch. Stand up, man, pick up your mat, walk, get going. But then comes the real plot twist in this drama. The sick man does just that. He stands up, he snatches his mat from the ground, and he walks off. It's not really the end of the story. For Jesus, some theological debate about keeping the Sabbath lies ahead, because he had healed this man on the holy day. But for the sick man himself, it is really the climax of the story. The rest is denouement. So what are we to make of this strange little story? Is it just another example of the healing power that seemed to infuse Jesus? Is it Jesus having a bad day? Or is there more to it? I think there's more to it. Much more. For I think this story has real practical application in your life and mine as well. For while some might say that in this story one deus ex machina replaces another, that instead of being rescued by an angel, the sick man is rescued by Jesus, I think that misses the basic point of the story. For while it does tell of a physical healing, I think its practical application has to do with the other broken places in our lives. Relational places, moral places, spiritual places. And ultimately, it isn't about healing brought about by some external force. Rather, it is about healing that comes from within. And it all starts with a basic question. Do you want to be made well? William Barclay writes that in essence, Jesus is asking, do you really want to be changed? If in our inmost hearts we are content to stay as we are, writes Barclay, there can be no change for us. Sometimes we are so trapped in our problems that we begin to take comfort in their familiarity. Sure, they cause us pain and heartache, but at least we know what to expect when we get up in the morning. I love the old joke that asks, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Answer, just one, but the light bulb really has to want to change. Do you want to be made well? Do you really want to change? It will only happen if you are emotionally, spiritually, psychologically committed to doing whatever you can to make it happen. That, of course, is often the tipping point. In 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is acknowledging one needs to change. Unless and until that happens, there is no hope of cure. Do you really want to be made well? Do you want to set aside the broken but familiar and take on that which, while new, is whole and well? Jesus never forced healing on anyone. Never. Neither does God. Only if we can answer yes to the basic question of desire, only if we are willing to change, only then can we proceed. Only then can we move on to a new sense of wholeness. And often we will discover the cure was lying there right in front of us all the time, just waiting for us to recognize it, just waiting for us to stand up. Author and pastor William Mueller tells a delightful story about a Christmas pageant once held at his church. It was the usual mix of, little boys in bathrobes and headgear and little girls in long, gauzy white gowns with wings their moms and dads had sewn on the back. The children were having trouble knowing exactly where they were supposed to stand on stage. So finally, in frustration, The director marked X's on the stage every place that a shepherd was supposed to stand, and O's every place where an angel was supposed to stand. And all that was well and good until the climatic last scene of the play, when all the angels and all the shepherds were all on the stage at the same time, and suddenly pushing and shoving and yelling breaks out. And the director says, "What's going on?" And one of the little shepherds says, "I can't see where I'm supposed to be standing. All the X's are covered by all the damned angels." Friends, sometimes the truth is covered up by all the angels. Sometimes the solution to our problem is obscured by the fact that we are waiting on a deus ex machina that we hope will appear on the scene at the last moment. Sometimes we just can't see what's right in front of us, what's been there all along. Sometimes God does work through angels. Don't misunderstand. I believe that sometimes happens. Sometimes God does work through miracles. Don't for a minute think I don't believe that can happen too. But more often than not, what we need to do is stop looking up, waiting for that God to be dropped by the crane. More often than not, what we need to do is stop waiting for angels and examine our own willingness to do what is needed to make the changes we long to see. And then stand up and walk. Amen. Sisters and brothers, I really like angels better. But we need to be willing. We need to be willing to look at ourselves and honestly recognize what we need to do and what we can do to become the people that God would have us be. As hard as that is, know that God will help you as you do just that. And that's no deus ex machina. That's a promise. Amen.